So the first field I want, just as it was before, is I want to go ahead and bring in project number. So I have to scroll through this list, and typically it's in alphabetical order. So I see that I do have project number available. Again, I'm just going to click on it, drag it over into my output field, just like that. And remember I said I cheated, I know that I wanted distributions, and that's because I also want some item level detail. So I want I would like, for example, in this case, an item description. So I'm going to scroll up, find that field within the distributions, click on it, drag it across. Also available to you within the purchase orders is the vendor name. So we're going to go through the process again, scroll down, locate the vendor name, and bring it across. Of course, since I'm looking at purchase order detail, I want the purchase order number, naturally. So I'm going to scroll through this list, and I apologize if I'm scrolling too quickly. I'm just looking for purchase order number. Here it is. Drag it across. And I want line level information, so I want PO line number. I'm going to bring that over too. And I also am interested in knowing something about the individual units. So I know from experience that that's the unit measure lookup code. Now this is an area where you can kind of run into some frustration, because if you sometimes the field that you're looking for, that you're familiar with calling it, and this is true, and a lot of you guys from finance are going to attest to this, that sometimes we call things by different names, and it gets even more complicated when you start to call things by their Oracle names. So for this case, it's unit measure lookup code. Now I'm going to take a little break here to show you a trick, because I know that this represents just the units. So I want to shorten that. You'll notice that underneath it, when I've highlighted that field, I can simply click edit, and I can give it an alias. So I was like, in my output, I don't want this to be called this long convoluted name. I just want it to be called units. And so I'm going to give it that alias, and then I'm just going to click apply. And so in the output, you'll see it's just going to be called the units. So next field I'm interested in is I want to know what the functional currency code is. So I'm going to look for that and see if I can find it in here. Looks like it's not available to me. I'm going to have to look for I know from experience here, this is another case. This is why sometimes people get a little bit frustrated, is that it's the unit price base. And you can see when you hover over it, a little description will appear, and it'll tell me that, okay, this is the foreign currency. So I think that that's going to be the field that I want for the foreign currency amount. I also want the quantity ordered, which is simply, if I remember, also just called quantity ordered. So you scroll through there. Here we go. Drag that into my fields. And I want the quantity billed as well. So for quantity billed, it's right up above it. And another thing, now here's where we're going to get into something that's a little bit just kind of interesting, is I want to know, and this is kind of the point of this whole particular report, what that uninvoiced amount is. So I want a field for uninvoiced. I'll scroll down here, but it doesn't look like it's something that's available to me. So this is a new kind of detailed feature that you can do within Webquery, and that is you can create your own fields. And so you see beneath here, if I don't find the field that I want, but I know that I can create that field, I can click on New. And in this case, I know that the uninvoiced is going to be the difference between the quantity ordered and the quantity billed. So all I have to do is scroll down the amount. So it's going to be called uninvoiced. And now there's a little warning down here that says you must validate the expression before choosing an aggregation. This is to prove that, okay, this is a valid expression that I've created. So you click on validate each time. And it's going to go ahead and check that and say, okay, it looks like that's fine. It'll gray it out. If not, it would have given you a warning. I want the total amount of that, so I'm going to go ahead and aggregate it. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, you can just simply click apply. So here we go. I've got the uninvoiced amount. And if I don't want the total, if I can just go in here and just leave it blank. So just wanted to show you that. In this case, I'm not going to aggregate it because remember I'm looking at things at the line level detail. So I'm actually going to bring in just all the lines. Another field that I wanted to bring in, which was just the actual amount of the uninvoiced. So that means I want the quantity ordered minus the quantity billed, but I want to multiply that times the individual price, right? So again, I'm going to do a new query. I'm going to scroll down, recreate it just like I did before. So this is a good reminder. I've got the quantity ordered minus, just like you would in Excel, quantity billed. And just like in Excel, because of order of operations, I want to make sure that this happens first because the next thing I'm going to do is multiply. And you might know from Excel, you can use the asterisk character times the unit price. So I can say I'm looking for the individual unit price. See if I can find that within here. Here we go. Times the unit price. So again, I've got quantity ordered minus quantity billed in brackets so that happens before it gets multiplied times the unit price. And that's going to give me the total amount that's associated with those uninvoiced purchase orders. Again, remember, when you do these new fields, you have to validate that. So I'm going to click validate. It came up gray, so that means that it accepts that as a valid expression. And on the lower right-hand corner, I'm going to click apply. So now I've got all the fields that I'm interested in for this report. Created it, and I'm ready to move to the next step. So remember, if we go back to our masthead, we've got all these different options. We're going to go to the next option, which is I want to apply some filters on this. Now, just a brief explanation for those that are new to report writing between the difference between parameters and filters. Because if you remember in our first class, we had parameters that were already there provided to us by Webquery. And when you executed that query, you had to input that detail. So we had the natural account, and we had a department, and we ran it for a particular year. And every time we ran that, that was required of the user to input it so they could change it. Now the difference is for filters is this is something that's going to happen behind the scenes every single time that you run the report. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Well, I know that I only want to see those uninvoiced amounts where there is something. So the first filter that I want to put on here, and this is neat because you can make a filter based off of fields that you've created yourself. I'm going to go down and look for my new field that I've created, which is uninvoiced. And I'm going to click on the condition drop down, and I've got all kinds of conditions here. And the one that I'm looking for is that I want uninvoiced amounts that are more than 0, because I want to see out there, especially for projects, purchase order invoices that are more than 0. But not only that, but you also want to look for open purchase orders, because if they're closed, well, then they've already been fulfilled, and so we're looking for open purchase orders. And so I'm going to look for, I know that there's a PO closed code that'll tell me whether or not that purchase order is open or closed. And again, clicking on my conditions, I'm going to say is not exactly, and then type in the word closed, which I know is if you look in Oracle, that's the field that's used to associate with those closed ones. Another thing here, and then, for those of you that are familiar with purchase orders, is I want to look for natural accounts that start with 5 so that it's going to be a cost account. So I can look down here and I've got, because I'm looking at things in the purchase order line level, I know that I'm going to have some distribution level detail here. And that means that I have available to me the charge account. So I go to the account, QV charge account, and I can do under conditions, and here's another option, I can do starts with 5. But I also want to put a wildcard so that it indicates anything else could be followed behind that. It'll make it a little easier for the system to find it for me. Okay, and then finally, I'm interested in shipment quantity received that is not equal to 0. Okay, so we're going to add that underneath here. And I click is not equal to. So 2. And then 0. So these are filters, and again, this is going to apply behind the scenes every single time that this report is run. These are the conditions that I'm looking for that are understood. Now after that, I also want to add parameters because I want, in this case, let's say I've got a project accountant that wants to look at this, or somebody within AP, and I want them to be able to look at it for a particular project number, because maybe they don't want to run it for every single project that's out there. Maybe they know which project they're looking at. But if they don't, I want to make it optional. You might remember from the last class, you can click optional. Now I have to select the field from the drop-down. So I'm looking for the project number. And then you're going to put is exactly. So we're going to assume that the person knows exactly what that project number is. So these are the basic, step-by-step things that are